I still remember a week ago or so talking to you guys about this bullish consolidation wedge pattern, as I called it, where we continued to kind of chop in here. And I said, listen, if you looked at 100 of this pattern formation, basically 70% would break to the upside. Well, that's obviously what ended up happening here. Now, the question is, my max upside target is about...
최근 비트코인은 매우 좋은 모습을 보여주고 있습니다. 이번 년 들어 가장 긴 연속 상승세를 보이고 있고요. 최근 44,000달러에서 거래되고 있습니다. 모두들 아시겠지만 이런 상승의 중요한 부분은 미국이 첫 번째 비트코인 ETF 허용할 가능성과 관련이 있습니다. 승인만 된다면 블랙록, 피델리티 같은 대형 금융 기업들이 투자를 늘릴 것으로 예상이 되고 있습니다. 네, 오늘 영상은 현재 암호화폐 시장 상황을 정리하면서 해외 크립토 트레이더이자 인더머니 스탁의 대표, 또한 2021년도에 하락 예측으로 유명해진 가레스 솔로웨이라는 트레이더의 가장 최근 분석과 마이크로스트레이지의 CEO 마이클 세일러의 비트코인 최근 인터뷰를 살펴보도록 하겠습니다.
Bitcoin continues to, as they call it, moon, right? And again, it has, trading at 44,000. Incredible move. Now, again, looking at this consolidation, I still remember a week ago or so talking to you guys about this bullish consolidation wedge pattern, as I called it, where we continued to kind of chop in here. And I said, listen, if you looked at 100 of this pattern formation, basically 70% would break to the upside. Well, that's obviously what ended up happening here. Now, the question is, my max upside target is about 48,000, and I've explained to you guys why 48,000 is significant to me. Basically, what we have is we have a pivot high from 2019. It cuts right through the bull market lows right here, and that line extends to basically 48 to 50,000. We then have this pivot high, which after the big drop, this was the highest pivot before the next leg down. That's also at 48 to 50,000. And then lastly, the Fibonacci 618 happens to be right there as well. Please understand, if we go to 48, 48.5, we're so close to 50,000. Now, is it likely we're going to go straight there? I mean, to be honest, I was only under my case for us reaching 48 was with the approval of the spot ETF. So I think the markets are assuming it's approved, and that's why you're seeing this continued upside. And my guess is when it's approved, you will see a move up to 48 or so, but then it will probably come back in significantly. And again, I still have it priced in for a pullback to about 30 to 32 once we see all of this movement on the spot ETF get done. Ethereum is struggling at a short-term resistance level right here. Again, if we take a look at this pivot high connected to this pivot high, we're just kind of right up there. We pierced it here, and we're pulling back again. So this 2,300 level was my first target on Ethereum. If it gets through here, you have another epic, and this is kind of my max moves. Remember, this is all probability based, so it doesn't mean I'm going to be right. We know that. I'm not always right, but I look at the probabilities, the charts, the technicals, the data. And the probabilities tell me that Bitcoin, again, 48 to 50,000, that's a major top. And I actually think we come back to at least 30 to 32 once we hit that. With Ethereum, 2,500 is that level on Ethereum, where if we get to 2,500, probabilities heavily favor a near-term top and a big corrective move. We had the altcoin run, like this is Solana. Incredible run from basically $20 to 68, 66, whatever it achieved up here. Since then, Bitcoin has shot up. We saw that chart. I mean, Bitcoin has literally gone boom like that. But notice Solana is struggling now below this previous high. Now, we'll have to see if it can break above it. But my guess, again, is that money is going to turn more towards Bitcoin. You'll see more money flow towards Bitcoin because the spot ETF is going to draw more interest from the public. Yes, Solana probably does very well. In fact, it's one of my favorite cryptos over the longer term that I still think will survive. But you have to just recognize that the altcoins are stalling, and this is now the Bitcoin show for now, at least.
And now a lot of talk about the ETFs coming. Bitcoin's going to be the apex ETF. You could think of it as a global monetary network. It's the first ETF that's based on a synthetic asset with an absolute fixed supply that also has global appeal. It's competing against the S&P index, the SPDR, SPY, and it competes against some other monetary ETFs like GLD or BOND or the NASDAQ index. But ultimately, Bitcoin is destined to rise above them as the global index because it doesn't have asset inflation. All these other indexes have asset inflation. If you buy billions of dollars of the S&P index. It cranks up the stock price of all the companies in the index. They issue more equity. They basically dilute their own stock, right? And so you're always going to create more of these things. Bitcoin in 100 years is going to be 1/21 millionth of all the money in the network. So the product was set a decade ago. It'll be the same 100 years from now. It may be the same 1,000 years from now. So getting rid of product cycles and getting rid of all the liability risk that comes with corporations, is a big upgrade for Bitcoin. So if you like technology, then Bitcoin is the apex technology. So the U.S. Treasury bond is the treasury asset for most corporations, most governments. There's hundreds of trillions of these bonds out there. But Bitcoin is digital money, and so it's a non-sovereign bearer asset. It serves the value of a bond, but it doesn't have systemic inflation or counterparty risk or mandatory custodians, and it doesn't have the real problem, negative real yields. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is digital. You can self-custody it. It appreciates much faster than fiat, and it allows you to escape the local currency risk. So, and it's the longest duration asset. A bond could be 30 years, but Bitcoin is forever. Bitcoin's a 1,000-year asset. I mean, it doesn't expire. Companies don't last 1,000 years. Buildings don't last 1,000 years. I mean, I guess the closest thing to something that might last 1,000 years is a bar of gold, but gold isn't scarce.